Welcome to today's panel discussion titled Unraveling Tech Trends, Market Shifts in the AI Revolution. Thank you for attending, and we encourage questions throughout the webinar through the chat functionality. Please indicate which panelist your question addresses, or if there's multiple panelists, please list that, and we will answer post-webinar if time permits or via email. This webinar is being led by Resolve Tech Solutions. So a little bit about the company. At Resolve Tech Solutions, we aim to be informative during our webinars. But first, we want to let you know a little bit about who Resolve Tech Solutions is if you have not heard of us. We are a mid-sized, award-winning consulting IT services and solutions firm headquartered in Dallas, Texas. RTS, which I'll also refer to Resolve Tech Solutions as, specializes in helping organizations achieve their IT modernization goals through updating core business process systems, doing migrations, digital transformation services such as custom application modernization, data modernization, cloud native and mobile development, and AI, ML, and RPA enablement. Resolve Tech Solutions is also a leading provider in cloud managed services for some of the largest energy and government industries in America. We empower our client partners to lead technology transformations by providing unparalleled service and continuous investment into our team. At RTS, we envision a world where digital and AI technologies drive limitless possibilities. So if you want to learn more about Resolve Tech Solutions, you can visit our website at resolvetech.com. My name is Carla Hartman. I oversee marketing at Resolve Tech Solutions and have over 10 years experience in the tech and software industry. I want to start off by getting to know you all. Since AI is going to be a large topic in this webinar, let's gauge where our audience is in their AI adoption. So let me launch our first poll. So about 40% are using it, which is very exciting. That is awesome. 40% plan to, and 20% have no plans of using AI. So we have the whole gambit. So moving on, when it comes to AI, this is where most leadership is saying to their team, we need to use it and then figuring out how. I recently had a conversation about 2024 being the year of AI proof of concepts. And I agree, this is a time of experimentation. This is also a time where many AI projects, like we saw with digital transformation projects, may fail, but not to be discouraged. Many will also succeed if you have the right people, processes, and technology in place. We hope this webinar gives you insight into trends shaping AI and the economy today, and we are thankful to have this esteemed panel that I just put on the screen to guide us through this conversation. With us today, we have Vinod Muthuswamy, the current CEO of Resolve Tech Solutions with over 20 years of technical experience. He is a seasoned leader and visionary with expertise in managed cloud services who has helped lead the digital transformation and modernization of several organizations. Vinod has served as president and chief technology officer at Innotek, 3Cube Technologies, and GDT Advanced Solutions. Along with Vinod, we have Sanjay Bhaskaran. Sanjay is a data tech and information services advisor to a leading private equity company. His focus is on innovative and transformative business models using AI, machine learning, and blockchain technologies. He has served as CEO of One Technologies, president of TaxAct, and general manager at Amazon in the Prime Card division. Last but not least, we have David Nielsen, Senior Vice President at Adapt2 Solutions. David has over 30 years of technical experience and currently leads the innovation team at one of the leading energy software providers in the United States. He has served on the North American Energy Standard Board for 8 years and wrote his master thesis on artificial intelligence in the energy industry. David's leadership and work have earned awards such as the AI Excellence Award for Hybrid Intelligent Systems and Best Big Data Solutions in the AI Breakthrough Awards. So I want to extend my gratitude to all of our panelists for participating today and sharing their insights. I'm excited, so let's get this party started and jump right in. First up, we have a very loaded question. We have just started the year, and I would love to get insights from all of the panelists on what major technology trends will we see in 2024. And Sanjay, you're up first.
That's great. Thanks, Carla. First of all, thank you very much for having me on the panel here in this webinar. It's great to, thank you to everybody else who's attending as well. So, this conversation, I would really just start with customers drive the demand for technology and other things. And really, when you study trends, you have to work backwards from customer demand and also look at things such as the size of the impact, the costs of those technologies. And essentially, those lead you to two types of trends. One, it falls in the bucket of ubiquity, which is big, it's large, it's evolving, there's continuous innovation, it's penetrating. And then there's emerging trends. So really, when I look at 2024 and trends in the first bucket of ubiquitous, there's $5.1 trillion of spend in technology by itself, growing at about 8%. But there's three real areas. There's plenty of areas, but there's three real areas where they're large and they're growing at a disproportionately faster pace than the average. The first one would be cloud. Cloud is roughly about $678 billion of spend in 2024 is what's expected, and growing at over 20% just this year alone, and forecast to grow at 15 to 18% over the next 5 years. So when you dive, the other two are cybersecurity and AI. So when you talk about cloud itself, I believe now that cloud is so heavily pervasive and penetrated, multi-cloud and hybrid cloud environments are becoming very important. Customers are focusing on that, and being able to work with multiple cloud partners is really beneficial in many different ways. A, access to multiple solutions. B, also from a cost standpoint, it gives you some degree of leverage, and for a lot of the bigger companies. And then also, hybrid clouds are also gaining pace. So that's kind of one thing. I think on the cloud side, industry clouds are becoming more important as well. When you think about vertical cloud platforms that combine software, platform, and infrastructure, these are solutions that are built for niche places, almost like the automotive business, right? Earlier, you just had everybody making parts, and then as you went on, you got these highly specialized modules that you could take, the dashboard, and you plug it in. Well, that's happening in the cloud space as well, where you're getting these modules and these niche sort of solutions. And it's not just the small guys, it's the big guys too. So if you think about Salesforce, they're building solutions that are targeted at specifically financial services that go way deeper than where they are today. And then when you look at things like digital twin technology, companies like Kongsberg, where my brother works, they're building digital twin technology for oil and gas and in the energy vertical. There's many others, with connected vehicles, with autonomous driving things. There's in insurance. There's how you not go into property and do things. On the cybersecurity side, I would say, Gartner's saying 80% of CIOs expect to spend more money. Cybercrime costs us, and people estimate it close to 6 trillion. We don't know the actual number, but let's just say it's somewhere between even 3 and 6 trillion. And today we spend about $188 billion on cybersecurity, and that's forecast to grow to little over 200 billion this year, and 400 billion by 2030. So another massive trend. I know the rest of the panel will cover these, so I don't want to spend too much time on it. I'm sure we'll kind of go through this in a little more depth. And then on the AI side, I would say, there's just beyond generative AI, where there's a lot of noise, AI has the ability to drive productivity just across the board for us. If you think about anything all the way from service, you go to a quick serve restaurant or whatever, any other fast food kind of place, your interaction is with people and more with AI. So the entire service economy is going to get changed quite radically. The second part is really documentation and processes. AI and this level of technology is enabling us to now go and automate processes, whether it's auto loans, whether it's insurance, whether it's mortgages, to go deep and automate those processes beyond just sort of service type stuff. And then, AI is also going to play a massive role on the engineering side with code and with, testing and things like that. It's going to have a pretty big role in marketing, analysis, research. And then, the one thing obviously is personal productivity. Everybody now, you can do reviews for people, you can hire people, you can do, if you're not using AI for those, and there's lots of those there. So those are sort of some of the big ones. If you think about the emerging ones, the one that I'll talk a little bit more about here is RWA, blockchains. I believe blockchain technology is going to become very pervasive. Real world assets, this is really the tokenization of all kinds of financial instruments and other instruments that would use ledger technology and that blockchain. And to me, JP Morgan Chase, the Onyx program, which is wholesale, applications of the blockchain in on-chain Fi. That's amazing. That's really incredible. There are many companies in that space. Avalanche, there's Layer Zero, Stellar. Not going to cover those in depth here, but that market is forecast to also be greater than $1 trillion in the next 5 years. It's growing rapidly. I would, if you're listening today and you haven't looked at RWA or real world assets, I would absolutely go look it up and read a paper on it. I believe that's going to be the future of how we manage assets, information, and money in the future. There's many other trends. I'll pause there. We'll go to the other panel, and then maybe I'll circle back if there's two other final points I'd want to jump in on.
All right. Yeah. Note to self, I am going to read some papers on RWA, the real world assets. I have not looked into that much. So I want to switch over to David. What do you think some of the major technology trends in 2024 will be?
Well, I think obviously for me, the answer should be AI, right? Since that's what I've been doing 30 years, but I'm going to go a slightly different take on it. I'm just going to say intelligent applications. We've been working a long time with quote unquote smart applications. And the way I look at smart applications is that, they have a formula. You know that if you have price quantity, you can calculate an amount. That's pretty easy. But really what the intelligent applications gives you is more insight. It gives another level. And now it's starting tackling non-linear problems. So things that doesn't have a simple formula. And that's really where machine learning and AI comes in. Because we want insights from the applications, whether that application sits on your desktop, if it's on your phone, if it's in your car, wherever it happens to be. You want to get a little bit more out of it than just saying that, if I hit the accelerator a little bit more, my speed is going to increase. You want a more insight as in, well, how can I drive more efficiently? If I'm looking at month-end close, how can I estimate better? That is basically a lot of these things that we have today are non-linear. We know we have a gut feel for that. If I have these inputs coming in, I can get these outputs, but we don't know what the formula is in between. AI and machine learning unleashes that whole world of solutions that we can come up with by training AI models, big and small, all the way from the Gen AI models. I mean, GPT-3 and GPT-4s, they're in sizes of the models are in the terabytes to be able to do predictions. But you can also have a small model that's a megabyte or sits on your phone. It could be we already have that. You have your type ahead and your autocorrect that we all love and hate when we autocorrect something. But that's a small AI that sits in there and predicts what you're going to say next. So I think the intelligence apps, including that more and more, whatever happens to be, step by step, is the big trend that we haven't had for a while, right? Back in the late 90s, we had the internet that drove networking and routing and everything that's got to do with bandwidth. Compute and storage wasn't that big back then. Today, that is really what's driving. It's a lot of compute, a lot of storage that's needed. And then that's going to drive additional things. You might not have it on your desktop, so then you go to the cloud to get these resources. So it's going to trickle down into a lot of different areas. But I think as a summary, it would be the intelligence applications that hopefully will flourish. And what's nice with that is You can do step by step. It doesn't have to be a huge bang to get there.
I'm excited to be on the receiving end of intelligent applications. I really am into the AI topics. So last but not least, we want to hear from you, Vinod. What major technology trends do you foresee this year?
No, thank you, Carla, and I want to thank all the attendees and the panelists as well. I'll sort of build on what Sanjay and David talked about. Really, when you really look at the evolution of technology over the past, 4 to 5 decades, David touched upon it, right? The first phase was just, compute coming into play, everybody getting computers and using compute to improve productivity, and then the next phase of evolution of that was, the networking and connecting computers and allowing the exchange of data. And in the 2000s and, honestly, 2000 to 2020, right, there was some technology shift that occurred, which was shifting away from the traditional infrastructures into a cloud-based infrastructure, because software evolved over a period of time, and we evolved in how we wrote software, how we virtualized hardware, and we allowed people to consume it at scale. That has really allowed us now to the point where it's very exciting to be in 2024. AI has been there for more than 3 decades, right? If you're talking about AI today and Gen AI and large language models, those are all things that have been in the works for several decades, and has gotten to this point where it's sort of the confluence and concurrence of several different shifts that have occurred, where infrastructure has moved into the cloud, which allows us to scale compute and scale our infrastructure, consume infinite amounts of data, and store infinite amounts of data. That was not possible 20 years ago. The foundation for AI, to be successful is the ability to, one, store and then prep that data and then consume that data, right? So that is possible today. Where I see in the next, from 24, looking forward in the next, 10 to 20 years, is this concept that David talked about, intelligent applications, right? The intelligent industrial revolution is going to happen. Everything that we built over the past 30 years is going to be shifted, where AI is going to be embedded at every critical point in the business where decisions could be made with data. When you talk about making decisions with data, then the next question is your data ready to be able to make that decision? That drives the underlying process of getting the data ready. Whenever there is data and whenever you're making decisions, you start having this issue of security around it, right? Who owns that data? Data privacy comes into play. So when Sanjay talked about cybersecurity, clearly that is going to be there forever. Cybersecurity, as technology continues to evolve, you'll constantly have spend in cybersecurity, because cybersecurity has to evolve. It's not it's not like a point solution that you've done it today and it's going to last for the next 20 years. So cybersecurity will be this consistent line that's going to go across, for the next 2 decades. AI is going to be a huge shift. We haven't seen such a shift in the past 2 decades, such a huge technology shift, which can create trillions of dollars in market opportunity across the board. It can even change the way we work, play, and live, because of how information can be made available to humans. A big aspect of AI that you're going to see from a technology trend perspective over the next coming years is humanizing AI, right? How do you, bring this intelligence that truly enables humans to augment that technology in their day-to-day lives and enable them to make decisions at a higher level than what they're doing today? How do you, accelerate their process of decision making? And that applies across multiple vertical industries. It's not tied to, let's say, banking, financials. It's not just tied to the defense sector. It cuts across each horizontal. So that's very exciting, and all of this is going to drive cloud, cloud computing. The consumption AI is possible, and for us to say that AI is now with ChatGPT, AI is a little democratized. It's only possible because of the cloud that exists behind it, right? So we're able to scale. The number of users that ramped up on ChatGPT was less than 90 days. They had like 100 million users, right? That wouldn't have been possible without the cloud. And so these 3 key trends are going to continue to drive, growth and adoption, and they're going to, proliferate not only across the core business functions, but even into the edge, into the operational technologies. And you'll see some of the projects on that we talked about Industry 4.0 IoT will now pick more traction and pace, where you're now connecting not just the business functions but also the operations functions, and create this intelligent fabric across the enterprise that is making decisions and enabling the business to be much more successful. This is the only way companies are going to outcompete with their within the marketplace. Technology is going to be the driver, and if you're not, as an enterprise, investing in it, and you're not establishing a vision for the next 5 years or next 7 years, you're going to be out of business, right? Because there are companies that are going to invest. They will be able to work much more faster, much more efficiently, and be able to capture and deliver a better customer experience than you if you haven't invested in these technologies.
So our top trends: intelligent applications, AI adoption, cloud, cybersecurity. If you're going to focus on any area in 2024 in your business, please let it be one of those so you don't fall behind. So thank you. I think that was a great way to kick off the panel. I want to go back to Sanjay with the next question. So Sanjay, we talked about the trends. With any new developments in technology, there are also challenges. What challenges do you foresee due to these trends in 2024?
A couple of things. So let me cover four different aspects to technology. Business challenges businesses will face. First one is, I think there's a big squeeze. After that big bold question, I think it's time to talk about the big squeeze. So costs are rising. If you're a CEO, if you're a general manager, if you're anyone who's looking at a P&L, everything's getting more expensive. Your people are getting more expensive. The technology costs are getting more expensive. Materials are getting more expensive. So you have this whole rising cost situation on your P&L. Separately, you have capital constraints. Given the high interest rates, especially for businesses that are not currently profitable, that are growth businesses that are looking for capital, there's challenges with capital today. It's more expensive. It's harder to get. And then if you think about the other side of it, your customers have the same problems. And so they are likely to have budget challenges for at least the next 4 to 6, maybe 8 quarters, hopefully less, right? So that's the first thing is, you've got a finite resource pool to operate in, and technology is going to be that enabler of really driving efficiency. And unfortunately, something in that P&L is going to have to give, and that's not the tech side of it or the security side of it. But anyway, that's sort of one squeeze. The second one is speed. Look, all of this technology has raised the bar to deliver new products, services, and solutions in the market at a certain pace. What would take 3 years used to take 9 months. It was brought down to 6 months, and now it's weeks and months. And to me, that one has to be aware of what the expectations are of the market in terms of that time to deliver products and services and upgrade things, and that speed is going to be incredibly important. And next one is, customer expectations are changing. Customers have a certain, they don't just interact with your company, they interact with a lot of other companies. And so their expectations are different, and it's important to understand those expectations. And then the last one I would share would be, look, all of this technology and this data suddenly hitting us raises 3-4 different topics, under this big broad umbrella: data, ethics, regulation, and compliance. If you sort of bring those 3 together, I know there's other questions that we'll probably cover those, with other panels to cover those. But to me, that's a massive challenge. And to me, that's an area where a lot of companies are underprepared. You're going to have to fork out the money to make sure that you get this right. These are areas where you can't be wrong. Ethically, you can't say a model did this and fall flat on ethics. Similarly, when you think about regulation, you can't be on the other side of the law with regulation if you have this type. So, and there's more of that coming. So that would be sort of some of the top challenges that businesses would face.
Okay, and you set us up perfectly, Sanjay, for the next question, which is around governance and regulation of AI. So I want to ask David, what predictions do you have around the governance of AI and regulation? You've been in this industry for about 30 years, so I know things are changing rapidly.
Yeah, I would just segment them into two different parts. So governance is really what both Vinod and Sanjay has talked a little bit about: security, making sure you have good data. If you just go out on the internet and get a data set and start using it, do you know where it's coming from? Do you know that it's good, that you can use it and it will give you good results? So that's on all of us. Everybody has to make sure that they have some kind of governance around the structures to know what they're using, what they're feeding into the models. When it comes to regulation, this is one of my pet peeves is people say AI or the AI is the worst word I ever hear, because there isn't just one AI. Yes, there's a whole spectrum. There's all the people going from AGI, so artificial general intelligence, that's basically this thing that can do anything, all the way to something, I mean, that's very small and very simple to do a very pointed task. And thinking that you can regulate or do things for that whole space is pretty much impossible. And so you kind of have to look at more in different areas. If you're just doing a simple tabular linear regression, you don't need any regulation for that because you have data, it's numbers, you want to calculate something else, that's numbers. However, if you're trying to say and claim that, yeah, you can do an AGI and it can answer anything and it's going to be truthful and all that type of things, okay, now you can say, okay, well, what type of regulation is needed? However, regulation is, as always, a loaded word, so I like to instead using certifications, I think is the way to go. As in, you certify a model or an AI application for a certain task. What is the task you're trying to do, and how well do you do that task? That is something we have a long history in the computer industry to know about. We do benchmarking, we have tests, you can get a score. And so I'm hoping that that's basically where the regulation, quote unquote, talk is going to go. Now, of course, in some cases, it's easy. It's easy to, if you know what the inputs are, you know what the outputs are, it's easy to calculate maybe an error rate or saying, okay, this model is 95% or 99% accurate. But in some cases, it's more about the outcome. What is the behavior you have? So if you want an autonomous vehicle to drive from my house to Dallas, well, that's a long way. How do you make sure that that happens? Then you might have to come up with basically a set of tests that the models should do. So I wouldn't want to see regulation as far as what is the input data model that you have to use or something like that, because there are different ways of solving the problem. I want to safely get from point A to point B. Once you've established that's the criteria, as if it's driving, if it's a bar exam, well, you know what the questions are. Then how you get there should be up to the companies to decide which components. You can go with a huge model and try to think that it can solve everything. You can go with 50 different smaller models and then patch them together. So trying to do things on the inside, I think, is going to be dangerous. It's going to stifle innovation. But having certifications on the outside is much a more common approach, and that is something we have. Then the next question there is going to be who's going to do that, and then depending on the industry, some have existing regulatory frameworks for doing it and saying, okay, this is the body that comes up with the standards. In some industries, it will have to be new, but that is my hope, at least, that it's not going to be a political saying, oh, we're going to do it under one blanket and try to figure it all out, but it should be down to the level of which is the intelligent application you're trying to do and what are the performance that you're trying to get out of it, based on then the criteria that somebody decides.
So we have a lot to think about, a lot of work to do in that area, but I want to circle back to how you started your answer around good data. So Gartner's predicted only 4% of organizations have AI-ready data. Vinod, do you find that shocking, and do you agree with that? Vinod, let me ask you to unmute quickly.
All right, sorry about that. I don't see that as shocking at all, Carla. I think what we have seen with enterprises is as much as enterprises have had the concept of wanting to share the data across the enterprise, we all know that enterprises have data silos. Data exists in different forms and fashions, and the volume of the data and the velocity of how that data is produced and generated varies depending upon the enterprise, the industry they're in. And typically, when we get into a conversation, with any large enterprise customer, the vision is to have, to establish a broad vision of how AI could be leveraged to achieve certain outcomes over a period of time. And when we start the conversation, we typically end up seeing that more than 6 to 8 months of the initial work is just understanding where the data is and whether that data is ready, and then developing a plan to truly transform that data fabric and to ensure that now that data platform is modernized to be able to feed information and data back into the models that David was talking about, and that also comes back, there's as you go through the process of establishing a governance structure, it becomes important that any policies that you document as an organization, now you also have that applied across the data that's moving between these different models and functions that are driving decisions. Because what you don't want happening is unconscious bias towards the information that's being fed into a model, and the model making a decision and generally gravitating towards a bias, right? So it's not shocking to see that only 4% of enterprise, and so that is going to be the heavy lift for the next 2 to 3 years. You'll see a lot of projects tied to transforming enterprise applications into intelligent applications are going to have this long tail of data readiness that's required, and as a first step to truly transform into becoming an intelligent enterprise. We have some current examples of projects that are in flight with customers across different vertical industries that we are seeing. So it's not shocking, and you'll continue to see that percentage slowly take over the years as more and more customers start modernizing their data platforms and getting them ready for AI.
So I'd like to get Sanjay and David's insight on this as well. Sanjay, what did you think of that statistic?
Yeah, I'm not shocked. So look, I've worked at Visa, and in 2011 we were using AI for fraud, neural nets. And I worked at Amazon as general manager there. We used to book 100% of our customers using machine learning on Amazon sites for cards. And when I look at those environments and you think of structured and unstructured data, we obviously were very good at using structured data. On the unstructured data, a lot of text was still sort of, back in the day, that was kind of what we're doing. But if you think about unstructured data today as voice, and if you start thinking about sound, like sound as well as like video content, right? So you start looking at that type of content, pictures, images, that type of stuff, along with sound as additional forms of unstructured data. Now you've got, and the ability to use that. So there's, 5 key challenges that companies have. I'm not shocked at all, because the first thing is completeness of data. And you just, before we go there, if you even go into any of the current AI tools that you use, you find them to be inaccurate in some cases. You find them to have a lot of hallucinations in some cases. And you're also finding, there's got to be some problem with the, somebody's going to get sued somewhere, sometime, for using proprietary data they should have been using, right? And so there's a lot of challenges. So there's 5 things I wanted to point out there. One is completeness of the data. I don't think organizations are ready for that when you think about structured and unstructured data. Consistency of that data, the uniformity with which that data is available is a problem. When you think about a bias in the data and addressing that upfront, that's a challenge. And then when you think about timeliness, the speed at which data gets consumed or it gets released from the source to come in, that's a challenge. And I think this one's a big one. The last one is provenance and integrity. If you think about how do you know that data is true? And there's a lot of challenges, especially when you look at unstructured data coming from the outside into an organization around the veracity and the truthfulness of that data. And to me, that's another kind of a challenge. So I'm not surprised. I think there's a lot of work to be done here. And I believe that there will be a premium that's paid for this unpreparedness.
All right, so two people are not shocked. David, same trajectory. What are your thoughts?
Well, my first comment, the shock, so to speak, was, well, how do you define AI-ready data? And then how you then say 4%. So if you read the article a little bit more, you can see that, yeah, they define it as having 5 criteria. It needs to be secure, enriched, fair, accurate, and governed by lighthouse principles, and being company values. To get everybody on board, I mean, up to speed on machine learning and how that works, the most key thing here that would move that number, I think, up and down would be, quote unquote, the enriched part. There's a lot of data you can just take as is. If you would just want to do a Tableau regression on it, then it's pretty straightforward. You have the data. However, if you take a picture, and if for all the fans of Silicon Valley, the TV show, where they had the hot dog app, so you can do it very simple. If they have an app, for those who haven't seen it, they had an app, and they showed the camera pointed it at a hot dog, and it thought about it, and it showed up, and it says hot dog, and everybody's happy. Oh, this is amazing. And they say, oh, point it to the pizza. So they pointed the camera to the pizza. It was thinking, and it came up and said, not a hot dog. And so obviously that is the enrichment part. That is when you say this picture, what does it show you? If you show just a hot dog and nothing around it, it's fine. If you show a picture of a hot dog eating contest, and you wanted to not just say if it's a hot dog or not a hot dog, but you want to be able to identify that, oh yeah, that's Joey Chestnut, and that's the Black Widow, and these are all the people in there, and yes, he consumed 70 hot dogs. Now it's a totally different ball game. So if you're looking for that 4%, yeah, I think it's underestimated, and I think it's overestimated, depending on what you're trying to do with your intelligent app. If you're trying to think that it can figure everything out, then it's underestimated. If you're trying to pick some good use cases to just solve that narrow, then it's probably underestimated. It's probably a lot higher than that. But I think the key point is that it points to the fact that the data is important, and how you use it, how you store it, how you enrich it, how you're making sure that the data, because without data, machine learning and AI wouldn't exist.
I like that answer. I like that you gave a very tangible visual answer with that hot dog and application. And Vinod, that leads me to the next question. You mentioned that you have some use cases, and I think David's use case kind of segues perfectly into that. So could you share any AI-driven use cases that you've seen or worked with lately?
Clearly, we have a use case for hot dog counting, in a hot dog eating context, right? So that's a very good use case. It's a fun use case for anybody who is working on AI, on computer vision especially. But no, I think one of the things that we see, especially with enterprises, is this challenge of every CIO has laid out this 3-year, 5-year vision of introducing AI into their enterprise. And then you move down a level into the mid-level managers, and they start thinking about, how do I really make this work, right? It's great to have a vision, but what are the true use cases that apply, and how can I start working on them? And what we are seeing in the industry itself is there's a huge void and gap between where the platforms have evolved, such as the large cloud providers, whether it's AWS, Azure, or Google Cloud, in terms of releasing services and launching services that are tied to, allowing enterprises to adopt AI ML, and where the enterprise itself is in that journey, right? We touched a little bit upon data readiness, but beyond just data readiness, identifying and going through the ideation process of putting a finite set of outcomes that they expect, and then defining what those outcomes are, and then creating a solution that can solve for that outcome is going to be critical across enterprises. I'll touch upon some use cases that are broadly applied horizontally across different industries. One of the use cases that we are working under our Juno Labs, which is our AI/ML, brand, where all our assets are on AI/ML, are part of Juno Labs, is leveraging Gen AI and a combination of our model mesh platform to transform field operations into intelligent field operations, right? That's a very broad statement that I said, transform field operations and intelligent field operations. So what is field operations? I'll take an example, a simple example of a service provider. All of us have AT&T, Comcast, or Spectrum as a service provider. How many times do you have your internet router go, not working, or something has been cut and you don't have connectivity? So you pick up the phone, you call Spectrum, and then they try certain things, and then they dispatch, some of these dispatch technicians to come on site, fix the problem, and then they leave and everything is working. On an average, that trip costs around $300 for a service provider just to respond, to have the technician come on site and do this. And some of these service providers have millions of customers, right, that potentially could be impacted. There are tens of thousands of field technicians that are going in and servicing these these customers. So the use case that we have developed is truly to transform that operational workflow where AI/ML is leveraged, and primarily generative AI and a combination of predictive analytics is included as part of that use case, where once a customer has a problem and calls into the support center, we have a Gen AI agent that actually presents potential solutions to the customer service agent, so it can accelerate the resolution process. And if they do want to dispatch a technician, it does intelligent routing based on leveraging some of the platform capabilities to pick the right technician who's closest to that location and then let them get there. But these things have existed. Intelligent routing has existed for years. So it's not something cool right now. But the interesting aspect is when you actually go on site, the technician now has an agent on his mobile, which is a generative AI agent, which will now walk him through the steps of how to resolve this issue. So it potentially reduces the time that they spend on site, because every trip, if they don't fix the issue in the first attempt, the second trip costs them another $300, right? So this allows them to save at least 10 to 15% of their overall operational cost, specifically in field operations. It also allows them to now think about different business and operational models on how they build their technician base. They don't need to spend amounts of dollars on continuously trying to train these technicians, but the use of AI allows those technicians to learn on the job. As long as they have the foundational knowledge, as they start releasing new technology, across these customers, they can continue to, send the same technicians, because now the Gen AI agents are going to allow them to solve those problems expeditiously without having to learn that, and they can learn on the job. It also allows them to have a much more flexible, workforce, which allows them to look at, a much more highly skilled and highly talented. So it's truly elevating the value that those technicians are bringing to the table. The same use case applies across different vertical industries, right? You think about utilities, you think about retail operations. It's now a matter of what data is fed into those into the platform and trained on, that you can now use the same use case across those industries. A similar variant of that use case is customer service, intelligent customer service operations. Customer service operations and providing information dynamically to customer service agents has existed over a long period of time, where technologies have existed where you make decisions, you try to go and look at knowledge bases and pull the right information using indexed search. Now with generative AI, you're now adding a turbo engine to that, right? Historically, search was giving data based on the keywords and the key strings that you use. Now with generative AI, you can truly apply context towards what the problem is and generate a response that's more contextually close towards resolving the problem itself, right? That is another area where we see a large set of adoption across vertical industries. It applies in banking, it applies across in call center environments, customer service, online, return material authorization, any place. It's about now taking that data and applying it back. The other interesting use case we have is in the auto insurance and lending industry, right? This lending industry always has had algorithmic decision-making process to ensure they're lending the right amount, looking at the risk associated with the specific case and with the specific individual. We are developing what we call as a auto underwriter, right? So an intelligent underwriter that's driven by both leveraging AI technologies, not only both on structured data but also generative AI technologies to go through and summarize data coming from massive amounts of documents and unstructured data that's being consumed. And there's a component of ethical AI that comes into play here, where we want to make sure that the models don't naturally gravitate towards having a bias towards the decision-making process, right? Because if you're feeding a certain type of data over a period of time, the results tend to, generate a bias. And, keeping a check on that bias is going to be important. So there's, similarly, there are many use cases across vertical industries. The healthcare industry has a similar, use case, specifically when it comes to, how do you reduce the risk of patients getting into critical chronic conditions, enabling them where you're predicting that possible risk condition ahead of time, so you can deliver that preventative care even before the signs of that issue pops up, right? So those are some of the things that can truly change the lives of people and can accelerate the process of truly using AI in transforming different aspects, of not just about the business, but also people's lives as well. So tons of use cases, and I can go all day long on use cases, right? You can just have a use case factory discussion of what are the use cases, but this is exciting. Why it's important for us is, as a company that's supporting enterprises and through this journey, we see a lot of time spent in ideation this year. A lot of time spent in understanding, here are the outcomes we want to achieve, and here's how we're going to achieve those outcomes. And that's how we've designed some of the capabilities as part of Juno Labs to enable customers to go through that ideation process quickly, test some of the use cases, and then get into a POC, accelerate it, and then potentially add more capabilities to that POC.
Great. No, that I love hearing real world examples, makes it less abstract and more tangible for someone like me who's a marketer. So this question I was going to save for the end. It came in from the audience, but you mentioned upholding ethical standards, and we did get a question from the audience for Sanjay about what solutions are needed to ensure that AI benefits society, upholds ethical standards, and becomes inclusive to all users without biases. So that is a lengthy question for Sanjay. It has a lot of different aspects, but let's focus on the AI upholding ethical standards.
Yeah, so I would say there's three components. So thank you for the question, by the way. It's probably one of the biggest challenges that we face today with AI. And if you think about the three different elements that I want to talk to you about, one is internally creating a governance mechanism. And that is, an organization having that sort of knowledge of, hey, listen, there could be some issues here. What are some of these issues? To have a discussion around that, to set up a governance around this, to look at potential biases and do that internally. The second one, I think David's already covered, which is, to have certifications. And I think this industry certification mechanism is another one that's a good one that industries and these groups should look at, where you're not solely relying on companies for self-governance. As we know, law and regulation takes a long time. It always lags, and that could take forever. But that sort of other industry level thing is interesting with certifications. And the third one is, I would say, there's a lot of awareness now building towards it. One of the people that I follow is Manoj Saxena. He's someone who he's an entrepreneur. He's worked in ethical AI for a decade, believe it or not. He's been talking about ethical AI for a decade. So there's some not-for-profits that are built around ethical AI. They're doing a lot of work, and a number of different companies. And this one's called Ethical AI Institute, if I'm not mistaken. That's exactly the name for it. So these are organizations where lots and lots of companies are now joining, and they're becoming part of finding solutions to solving these. So I would say those are sort of three ways in which you would look at it. Outside of that, I'm sure there'll be solutions and tools which look at that. I mean, I think I had a very fascinating conversation with one of my friends, Nurtaken, who runs a lot of the AI stuff for Capital One, and what he was talking a little bit about was there's ways in which you can connect your data with other data and have a third party in a double-blind manner check your output for you. So I believe that there is the credit bureaus can play a role in that. There's other organizations. So to study gender bias or to study some other kind of issues that you face, ethical issues that you face, you don't know what you don't know until you test it, right? You can have all the right intent, but until you actually test it. So I believe, there's some solutions there that would get built up better over time.
Great. No, I think that answered the question well. And the audience member said, thanks for your recommendation to Manoj. So we've focused a lot on the process and technology, but not as much on the people. So the last few questions are going to talk about workforce in the modern era. And David, you've been in the AI field for a long time. So how will advancements in AI and automation reshape our workforce? Will it create more jobs than it displaces? And how can we as team members and employees and employers prepare for this shift?
Yeah, the first answer would be, yeah, I totally think that it's going to create more jobs than it's going to replace. Just like we've seen in all technological advances. I mean, farming, around the 1900, most people were doing farm work. Well, it's going to be a move. People are going to do different things. So now today, we don't have a lot of people who's on the farm, but the ones that are on the farm, we don't do a combine harvest the wheat because it's easy and straightforward. Now some people move over, and now I can get my blueberries because I really like blueberries, and that's a lot harder to machine harvest. And so we're going to see, I think, the same thing with AI. It's going to be change. I think that's the only thing that we know. Change is the only thing that's constant. But it doesn't necessarily mean that jobs is just going to disappear and it's all going to be taken off by a computer. And it's going to be gradual. It's going to be step by step. Any industry always starts, you do the low-hanging fruit, literally speaking, as in you do what's easy, right? Easy, and that gives you the best bang for your buck. Those are things that you start introducing into the intelligence app, or you're trying to be more intelligent when you work through it. So for people to look into AI, I think everybody should do it. Doesn't mean that the AI is going to be there. You mentioned my master thesis a long time ago. Back then, we have expert systems. He was trying to figure out and see, can we use an expert system to do trading, power trading specifically? And the result was actually, no, can't do it. The technology wasn't there. But what came out of it was basically a lot of documentation of how does good traders operate versus people who's noobs or rookies coming in. What are the mistakes that you shouldn't be making? So what actually came out of it was documentation, because people started asking the questions, why? Why are we doing it? So that's, to me, is the AI revolution, is starting to ask why. Why are you doing certain things? Can it be done better? Can you do it so that you improve your bottom line or your top line? Can you question those type of things? And in some cases, there might be some technology that can help to automate that, and that's good. But in some cases, it just increases your insight into why you're doing things and insight into the data that you can then use for decision making. So I think everybody should start preparing for AI, or at least learning about what it is. It's not something murky or strange, but it's really a subset of over 30 different areas that you can use, and you can take them for point solutions. But in some cases, you might say, okay, well, how do I take my problem that I have and translate it into those point solutions? Sometimes you can, sometimes you cannot. But the good exercise is at least going ahead and doing it. Start asking yourself why. If the data tells me this, what does that mean for me as my business or for my job? So I'm excited. I'm a techno optimist. I think this is, I mean, AI is good, primarily because it asks us to get questions and answer around why are we doing things and why are we doing things the way we do it? Because business is ever changing. Competitors come up, new opportunities are there. And the people who are going to lose out are the people who stay stagnant and don't move. And because there's always going to be a competitor eating your lunch, no matter what it is. So stay up to speed, get involved, ask why.
Yeah, no, one of my favorite books is Start with the Why. So I love that you were saying, ask why. And I agree with you. I don't feel AI will replace people's jobs, but people that don't use AI, they're going to be at a disadvantage. So yes, use it, use it, use it. And our last question is, of these people that are going to be learning AI and using AI, Vinod, how can companies attract and retain top tech talent? Kind of a loaded question, but as I said, to have the perfect combination, you need people, process, and technology. So how do you get the right people and retain them?
Yeah, it's a very good question, Carla. And I'll sort of touch upon what David talked about. I think it's important that for everyone to understand that AI is going to improve productivity of the workforce. There's two aspects to it. There's the tech talent that's building all these capabilities within the IT organizations, and there's also the consumer of these capabilities where their work is going to change, right? The way they did things are going to change because of the introduction of AI into the business process itself. So on the tech talent, there is a huge void right now in terms of the supply of the talent that can actually enable and drive the adoption and the demand that enterprises are now ramping up to introduce AI into the mix. It's also creating new job opportunities, new roles that didn't exist 3 years ago, right? 3 years ago, if I'd come in and told you, Carla, can you go find out about, can you find me a prompt engineer? You would say, what are you talking about, right? Prompt engineering is now one of the hottest, job openings that is out there. Every company that's, leveraging, Gen AI of some sort is now building teams and training them. So first and foremost thing is, as organization, when you're looking at, your as a CIO or, any organization that has a massive tech pool, you have to look at what your vision is in terms of the technology advancements that you're going to implement, and what is the vision that you're expecting your business to get out of in terms of the outcomes. Once you establish that, there is a combination where you have to develop sort of a learning program that allows some of your existing talent pool to continue to scale up and upskill themselves through this journey. A lot of data engineers and engineers that have had access to data are great, their foundational knowledge to potentially learn some of the and train themselves in tuning some of the existing models, leveraging some of the platforms that are out there. So establishing a learning map for them is going to be critical to continue to maintain, because when you heard about discussions, AI is going to be industry specific. There is nothing as just general applied intelligence that could be applied across all industries. The functions of each industries are unique, even though they may be just adjacent to each other. The field operations in retail is completely different than field operations in a service provider. It's completely different in field operations in utility. So having the knowledge of the industry now is a huge plus, especially for the tech talent that have been in that industry for years. It's a matter of their motivation, motivating them and enabling them, and rewarding them to upskill themselves is going to be critical. That's the only way you're going to fill the fill the gap, in terms of, fill the gap of demand that we have. The next is also start hiring, fresh graduates out of school. Make sure that they are coming into the pool, so they bring some more creative, innovative ideas. Most of the graduates that are coming out of school have tried some of these things in labs already. They've tested, they've done some data wrangling. They've tested some models. They understand it. Bring them in and start teaching them the industry. So you're taking an industry leader, and someone with industry experience and training them on AI and machine learning. You're bringing some, fresh graduates who have early knowledge of AI ML, but don't have the industry knowledge. So start bringing them, and then slowly start building this journey for them where they can grow in those roles, right? So that's going to be important. I saw an article, just recently, in Forbes magazine, that one of the biggest gaps will be, in tech talent will be, the technical engineers that understand, the legacy applications, but also have knowledge of how to apply, the intelligence to those applications, right? That's going to be the area of gap that you're going to see, and that cannot happen by, just people taking, certification courses. You have to take experienced, talented individuals that are working in the industry today. Develop programs, reward them for, spending their time, through this learning journey, and ensure that they are getting to their destination through this process. That way, as the technology shifts, I mean, AI is getting into every aspect. AI is getting into coding. AI is getting into enabling, intelligent tools out there. It will open up a whole new, way of how we build software, how we create new applications, and how we look at, implementing technology in the next 10 to 15 years, right? So that part, and culturally, opening up everyone to now embrace it, making sure that, it is going to be part of your journey. That's going to be important. The cultural aspect is always the most difficult part in changing individuals. And this has happened when we moved from, data centers to the cloud. People who were comfortable with data centers didn't want to move to the cloud because it was a new thing. They didn't understand it. But once they started learning about it and they realized, hey, I'm doing the same thing, but I can do it much faster in the cloud. I don't have the limitations of having to walk to a data center and do these things. I can just click a button. It became much more easier. So I think there are people that will shift. There are people that may not shift. They'll be left behind. But, it's an important aspect as a leader. If you're leading an organization, that you look at both and design and make sure that no one is left behind, and you develop programs that enable them to embrace it. That's the only way we'll be, as an economy, accelerate the adoption of AI, because AI allows us to build and enable ourselves to compete better, in the marketplace. That even applies when you look at it as a country and a nation. It allows us to compete better in the global marketplace as well. So it is very important for us collectively to embrace this and adopt this, and it has to happen not only at a macro level but at a micro level.
No, great answers. I always feel very energized after hearing the insights of phenomenal people like our three panelists. So I want to express my sincere gratitude to Vinod, Sanjay, and David for participating this afternoon. We do have a post-webinar survey. We want to make sure this was a good use of your time. So please fill that out. It'll pop up at the end of this webinar and be answered via email. If you'd like to see any upcoming webinars from Resolve Tech Solutions, follow us on LinkedIn. And once again, thank you, panelists. Great conversation. Thank you so much for your time. And thank you to our attendees for joining us.